everyone, and welcome back to this video series on Microsoft Windows 2000. Now, in the last part, we explored the history of Windows 2000. We explored a couple of its predecessors, those being NT4 and Windows 98 2nd Edition. But in this video, we're going to be talking a wee bit about Windows 2000 itself. We're going to take a look at its feature set, and we're going to actually be having a wee play about with the operating system, and at the end we will be discussing the life of Windows 2000, what happened to it over the years. So, without further ado, let's get back on it. So, why would you have upgraded to Windows 2000? Apart from, it's Windows 2000. It's the best operating system ever. Well, Windows 2000 introduced many of the new features of Windows 98 and the 98 2nd Edition into the NT line, such as the Windows Desktop Update, Internet Explorer 5, which was superseded by Internet Explorer 5.5, and finally version 6. Outlook Express, NetMeeting, support for FAT32 file system, Windows driver model, Internet connection sharing, Windows Media Player, Web DAV support. Certain new features are common across all editions of Windows 2000, among them NTFS 3.0, the Microsoft Management Console, UDF support, the Encrypting File System EFS, Logical Disk Manager, Image Color Management 2.0, support for PostScript 3 based printers, OpenType, and Type 1 PostScript font support, usability enhancements and multi-language and locale support. And Windows 2000 also introduced USB device class drivers for USB printers, mass storage device drivers, and improved FireWire SBP-2 support for printers and scanners, along with a safe removal applet for storage devices. Windows 2000 is also the first Windows version to support hibernation at the operating system level. OS-controlled ACPI S4 sleep data. Unlike Windows 98, which required special drivers from the hardware manufacturer or driver developer. A new capability designed to protect critical system files called Windows File Protection was introduced. This protects critical Windows system files by preventing programs other than Microsoft's operating system update mechanisms, such as the package installer, Windows installer, and other update components from modifying them. The System File Checker utility provides users the ability to perform a manual scan of the integrity of all protected system files and optionally repair them, either by restoring them from a cache stored in a separate DLL cache directory or from the original install media. Microsoft recognized that a serious error, blue screen of death or stop error, could cause problems for servers that needed to be constantly running, and so provided a system setting that would allow the server to automatically reboot when a stop error occurred. Also included is the option to dump any of the first 64 kilobytes of memory to disk, the smallest amount of memory that is useful for debugging purposes, also known as a mini dump. A dump only of the kernel's memory, or a dump of the entire contents of memory to disk, as well as write that this event happened to the Windows 2000 event log. In order to improve performance on servers running Windows 2000, Microsoft gave administrators the choice of optimizing the operating system's memory and processor usage patterns for background services or for applications. Windows 2000 also introduced core system administration and management features such as Windows Installer, Windows Management Instrumentation, and event tracing for Windows into the operating system. The most notable improvement from Windows NT 4.0 is the addition of plug and play with full ACPI and Windows driver model support. Similar to Windows 9X, Windows 2000 supports automatic recognition of installed hardware, hardware resource allocation, loading of appropriate drivers, plug-and-play APIs, and device notification events. The addition of the kernel plug-and-play manager, along with the power manager, are two significant subsystems added in Windows 2000. Generic support for 5-button mice is also included as standard. And installing IntelliPoint also allows reassigning of programmable buttons. Windows 98 lacked generic support. Driver Verifier was introduced to stress test and catch device driver bugs. Windows 2000 introduces layered windows that allow for transparency, translucency, and various transition effects like shadows, gradient fills, and alpha-blended GUI elements to top-level windows. Menus support a new fade transition effect. The Start menu in Windows 2000 introduces personalized menus, expandable special folders, and the ability to launch multiple programs without closing the menu by holding down the Shift key. A resort button forces the entire Start menu to be sorted by name. The taskbar introduces support for balloon notifications, which can be used by application developers. Windows 2000 Explorer introduces customizable Windows Explorer toolbars, autocomplete in Windows Explorer's address bar and ROM box, advanced file type association features, displaying the comment in shortcuts as tooltips, for example, extensible columns in details view, icon overlays, integrated search pane in Windows Explorer, sort by name function for menus, places bar and common dialogues for open and save. Windows Explorer has been enhanced in several ways in Windows 2000. It's the first Windows NT release to include Active Desktop out of the box, which was first introduced as part of Internet Explorer 4.0, or specifically the Windows Desktop Update in that, which you can actually install to Windows NT, and only pre-installed in Windows 98 by that time. It allowed users to customize the way folders look and behave using HTML templates, having the file extension .htt. The quote-unquote web-style folders view left with the Explorer pane displaying details for the object currently selected is turned on by default in Windows 2000. For certain file types such as pictures and media files, the preview is displayed in the left pane. Until the dedicated interactive preview pane appeared in Windows Vista, Windows 2000 had been the only Windows release to feature an interactive media player as the previewer for sound and video files, enabled by default. However, such a previewer can be enabled in previous versions of Windows with the Windows Desktop Update installed through the use of folder customization templates. The default file tooltip displays the title, author, subject, and comments. This metadata may be read from a special NTFS stream if the file is on an NTFS volume, or from an OLE structured storage stream if the file is a structured storage document. All Microsoft Office documents since Office 4.0 make use of the structured storage, so their metadata is displayable in the Windows 2000 Explorer default tooltip. File shortcuts can also store more comments which are displayed as a tooltip when the mouse hovers over the shortcut. The shell introduces extensibility support through metadata handlers, icon overlay handlers, and column handlers in Explorer's details view. The right pane of Windows 2000 Explorer, which usually just lists files and folders, can also be customized. For example, the contents of the system folders aren't displayed by default, instead showing on the right pane a warning to the user that modifying the contents of a system folder could harm their computer. It's possible to define additional Explorer panes by using div elements in folder template files. This degree of customizability is new to Windows 2000. Neither Windows 98 nor the desktop update could provide it. The new dynamic HTML-based search pane is integrated into Windows 2000 Explorer, unlike the separate search dialog found in all previous Explorer versions. The indexing service has also been integrated into the operating system, and the search pane built into Explorer allows searching files indexed by its database. Speaking of file systems, Microsoft released version 3.0 of NTFS, sometimes incorrectly called NTFS 5 in relation to the kernel version number, as part of Windows 2000. All versions of Windows 2000 support three types of dynamic disk volumes, along with basic disks: simple volumes, spanned volumes, and striped volumes. Simple volume is a volume with disk space from one disk. A spanned volume is where up to 32 disks show up as one, increasing in size but not enhancing performance. When one disk fails, the array is destroyed. Some data may be recoverable. This corresponds to JBOD and not to RAID 1. Striped volumes, also known as RAID 0, store all their data across several disks in stripes. This allows better performance because the disk reads and writes are balanced across multiple disks. Like spanned volumes, when one disk in the array fails, the entire array is destroyed. Some data may be recoverable. In addition to these disk volumes, Windows 2000 Server, Windows 2000 Advanced Server, and Windows 2000 Data Center Server support mirrored volumes and striped volumes with parity. Mirrored volumes, also known as RAID 1, store identical copies of data on two or more identical disks. This allows for fault tolerance. In the event one disk fails, the other disks can keep the server operational until the server can be shut down for replacement of the failed disk. Now, you'll have heard about RAID on this channel before because I have a server, and, well, my old server, I've had a number of servers over the years, my old server actually did use RAID 1, and actually my current server does as well for the boot drives. Striped volumes with parity, also known as RAID 5, which is what my current server uses, function similar to striped volumes or RAID 0, except parity data is written out across each of the disks in addition to the data. This allows the data to be rebuilt, as it were, in the event that a disk in the array needs replacement. Now, here's something that really did speak to me when I upgraded to Windows 2000. So, grab your tea and your compacts, because it's about time we spoke about accessibility. Yes, it is. With Windows 2000, Microsoft introduced the Windows 9X accessibility features for people with visual and auditory impairment and other disabilities into the NT line of operating systems. These included sticky keys, which makes modifier keys like Alt, Control, and Shift become sticky, as in a user can press the modifier key and then release it before pressing the combination key, activated by pressing Shift 5 times quickly. Filter keys, a group of keyboard-related features for people with typing issues, including slow keys, which ignores any keystrokes not held down for a certain period. Bounce keys, which ignores repeated keystrokes pressed in quick succession. This is useful for people who can be shaky. Repeat keys, which lets users slow down the rate at which keys are operated via the keyboard key repeat feature. Toggle keys, when turned on, Windows will display a sound when the caps lock, number lock, or scroll lock key is pressed. Sound entry, which is designed to help users with auditory impairments. Windows 2000 shows a visual effect when a sound is played through the sound system. Mouse keys lets users move the cursor around the screen via the numeric keypad, if you have one. And serial keys lets Windows 2000 support speech augmentation devices. High contrast themes are there to assist users with visual impairments. To be fair, they were there in Windows NT 4, but not via the accessibility wizard as far as I know. Well, the accessibility wizard wasn't there! Microsoft Magnifier was a docked screen magnifier that enlarged a part of the screen that the cursor is over. And, new to Windows 2000, we had the on-screen keyboard, which displays a virtual keyboard on the screen and allows users to press its keys using a mouse or a joystick. So if you have something like one of the Praetorian devices, like the joystick or the trackball, that could make typing potentially easier. Microsoft Narrator, introduced in Windows 2000, is a screen reader that uses the Speech API version 4, which would later be updated to Speech API version 5 in Windows XP. And unlike the on-screen keyboard, the narrator did not become available in Windows ME. So if you wanted to use Microsoft Narrator, you would have had to have gotten Windows 2000 or wait for Windows XP. That said, as you will probably see, Microsoft's Narrator really wasn't the best at the time. It's a lot better now, I would think, but back in the day, it really wasn't that good, and to be honest, most people would have been using a third-party program like JAWS or Supernova, which do work with the Windows 9X, or did work with the Windows 9X line of operating systems at the time. Windows 2000 also gave us the Utility Manager, which was an application designed to start, stop, and manage when accessibility features start. This was eventually replaced in Windows Vista with the Ease of Access Center, which I have been through before. The Accessibility Wizard was a control panel applet that helped users set up their computer for people with disabilities. It worked by answering a few simple questions about how you used your computers and what difficulties you had, but that too was replaced and greatly improved in the Ease of Access Center in Windows Vista. Windows 2000 introduced the multilingual user interface, MUI. Besides English, Windows 2000 incorporates support for Arabic, Armenian, Baltic, Central European, Cyrillic, Georgian, Greek, Hebrew, Indic, Japanese, Korean, simplified Chinese, Thai, traditional Chinese, Turkic, Vietnamese, and Western European languages. It also has support for many different locales. Windows 2000 included support for version 7 of the DirectX API, commonly used by game developers on Windows 98. The last version of the DirectX API that was released for Windows 2000 was version 9.0C, Shader Model 3.0, which ships with XP Service Pack 2. Microsoft published quarterly updates to DirectX 9.0C through the February 2010 release, after which support was dropped in the June 2010 SDK. These updates contain bug fixes to the core routine and some additional libraries such as D3DX, Xaudio 2, Xinput, and manage DirectX components. The majority of games written for version of DirectX 9.C up to February 2010 release can therefore be run on Windows 2000. Windows 2000 included games such as Windows NT 4.0 did, FreeCell, Minesweeper, Pinball, and Solitaire. Windows 2000 introduced the Microsoft Management Console, which is used to create, save, and open administrative tools. Each of these is called a console, and most allow an administrator to administer other Windows 2000 components from one centralized computer. Each console can contain one or many specific administrative tools called snap-ins. These can either be standalone with one function or an extension adding functions to an existing snap-in. In order to provide the ability to control what snap-ins can be seen in a console, the MMC allows consoles to be created in author mode or user mode. Author mode allows snap-ins to be added, new windows to be created, all portions of the console tree to be displayed and for consoles to be saved. User mode allows consoles to be distributed with restrictions applied. User mode consoles can grant full access to the user for any change, or they can grant limited access, preventing users from adding snap-ins to the consoles though they can view multiple windows in a console. Alternatively, users can be granted limited access, preventing them from adding to the console or stopping them from viewing multiple windows in a single console. The main tools that come with the Windows 2000 can be found in the Computer Management Console, in administrative tools in the control panel. This contains the event viewer, a means of seeing events and the Windows equivalent of a log file, a system information utility, a backup utility, task scheduler, and management console to view open shared folders and shared folder sessions, configure and manage COM+ applications, configure group policy, manage all the local users and user groups on a device manager. It contains disk management and removable storage snap-ins, a disk defragmenter, as well as a performance diagnostic console which displays graphs of system performance and configures data logs and alerts. It also contains a service configuration console which allows users to view all installed services and to stop and start them, as well as configure what those services should do when the computer starts. Check Disk has significant performance improvements. The System File Checker also comes with Windows 2000. It's a command line utility that scans system files and verifies whether they were signed by Microsoft and works in conjunction with the Windows file protection mechanism. It can also repopulate and repair all the files in the DLL cache folder. Recovery Console is run from outside the installed copy of Windows to perform maintenance tasks that can neither be run from within it, nor feasibly has to be run from another computer or copy of Windows 2000. It's usually used to recover the system from problems that cause booting to fail, which would render one's other boot tools useless, like safe mode or last known good configuration, or check disk. It includes commands like fixmbr, which is not present in MS-DOS. It has a simple command line interface used to check and repair the hard drives, repair boot information including NTLDR, replace corrupted files with fresh copies from the CD, or enable or disable services and drivers for the next boot. The console can be accessed either by booting from the Windows 2000 CD and choose to start Recovery Console from the CD itself instead of continuing with setup. The Recovery Console is accessible as long as the installation CD is available, if used in this way. Or you can pre-install the Recovery Console on the hard disk as a startup option in boot.ini via win32.exe with the /cmd cons switch. In this case, it can only be started up as long as NTLDR can boot from the system partition. Windows 2000 introduced the Windows Script Host 2.0, which included an expanded object model and support for log-on and log-off scripts. Windows 2000, even client-side, supported a number of improved networking technologies, including the ability for the server message block to directly interface with TCP/IP without having to use TCP/IP over NetBIOS. And it introduced a client-side DNS caching service. So if the Windows 2000 DNS resolver receives a query response, this is added to a cache, and when it queries the same response record name again, and it's found in the cache, then the resolver does not need to query the DNS server, which speeds up DNS query time and reduces network traffic. Okay, it's time. Let's look at Windows 2000, shall we? As you can see, we have an actual splash screen, but and I believe this is the only version of Windows to do this. it has an actual progress bar that goes from one end to the other, rather than being a one that goes round like Windows XP. So again, we can press Control Alt Delete to log in, but this is not enabled by default. Windows 2000, built on NT technology. What? New technology. Because that's what NT stands for, new technology. So let's log on. Yep, again using creative sound drivers. Never mind. So here's the Windows 2000 desktop. Lot of things that I can show you on here. As we can see, we've got the active desktop, just like in Windows 98. If we go to the WinNT folder, we again have the warning. And with what I can do as well is show you the Windows 2000 startup sound using the media player preview. There we go. Windows 2000 was the first version of Windows to feature a My Pictures folder, which had its own unique icon and what have you. And again, we've got another preview. Look at that, image preview. Now this became the default image viewer in Windows ME. Windows 2000, I believe it was still Internet Explorer. But Windows 2000 also was the first version of Windows to come with an open with option by default that would allow you through the right click menu to open with any given program that you wanted to open it with. So now, as you can see, we can open this image either with Microsoft Photo Editor or Imaging Preview or Internet Explorer or Imaging or anything else. Default host application. That would be that would allow me to open it on the host. This is a VMware feature, nothing to do with Windows 2000. So as you can see, we have the fading start menu, and also the mouse pointer has a shadow underneath it. Again, new to Windows 2000. And something that we've not talked about as well is a newer colour scheme. I quite like it. I think it's mature. I mean, I was a bit unsure about the warmer coloured dialogue boxes at first, but they've kind of grown on me. I like it. I think it looks a wee bit more sophisticated. And even the shade of blue for selected items is a bit more, has a bit more kind of yellow in it. Very, very subtle, but it is there. And of course the desktop is no longer teal. It's this kind of almost kind of darker sky slate blue. I don't know what colour you would call this. Background. I like it. I really do. It was very of its time, I think. So it really worked. It worked quite well, and it just made the operating system look a bit more sophisticated, and it made older versions of Windows look a bit more. It looked, yeah, made them look a wee bit more simplistic by comparison. That's not the word I'm looking for, but it's the word I'm going to go with. So, as you can see, we've got IE 5.01. Obviously, doesn't work, but there we go. We have the MSM homepage from 2000. I actually remember when it looked like this. Oh, mercy me, it fair takes me back, so it does. And what else do we have? Well, we have stuff on here that is native to Windows 2000 Service Pack 4. Set programs and defaults. This is a feature that was backported from Windows XP Service Pack 1. But there you go. You also have... but let's have a look at the accessibility tools. Narrator.
Foreground window.
And
OK.
I believe...
push button to press. Foreground window. Help. Push button to press. Use space bar. Narrator.
I believe this
dialog.
is the version that I can do
now,
this.
Shut down. Menu at. Access. WordPad. Foreground window. Document. Word. Space. R-O. L-O-B-P. Space. O-E. Space. O-I. Space. O-I. S. Space. O-I. Space. My rafflecopter goes swa 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 swa.
Really, it was not the it wasn't the best text-to-speech program, but I guess it would work in a pinch. A bit like the docked magnifier of the days of Windows past would work in a pinch. Also, we now see that even though Windows 2000 definitely supports common and personal start menu, folders, programs folders, and program groups, what have you, these are not segregated. These are all together. So, really, there's no way to know which is which unless you actually looked at where the files were. So, I guess I could go to Creative, and if I did drop down, I see that this is a common program group because it's in all users. Whereas if I opened up accessories, I find that that's a personal program group. But you might have also noticed if I hover over programs that support it, I get a tooltip. Microsoft Word, it tells me what it does. And programs that don't support it, programs that don't actually have a tooltip, it just tells me the location. I always quite like this. But there you go. Now, automatic update is also something that's brand new to... well, it was backported from Windows XP in a service pack. First version of Windows to come with automatic update, however, was actually Windows ME. But there you go. Now you have folder options as well. Obviously, that's something from Windows 9X. If we go to system by right-clicking on my computers or double-clicking on system in the control panel, we find that, again, the amount of RAM in this virtual machine is given in kilobytes, but we can access Device Manager from here. We also have user profiles. Again, that's not where to organize user profiles, but things are, I think, easier to do on Windows 2000. We have the hardware wizard where we can add or remove hardware because we have plug and play. So if I wanted to try and find a driver for that USB controller, I could do that. And even search Windows Update. And this has worked in the past. When I've had machines with USB 2 controllers, Windows 2000 tends to work quite fine with them. Oh, look. We have found it. Look at that. We've installed hardware in Windows 2000. And there we go. Have USB support in Windows 2000. Would you look at that? And it was as easy as that to install some hardware on Windows 2000. That was very well illustrated. And we can also go into administrative tools. We can have a look at the computer management console. So from here, you can look at storage. So we've got all the things to do with storage. So disk management, logical drives, removable storage, disk defragmenter. You can make new users and groups from this from the management console. Have a look at running services, and we can actually look at properties of services and have more control over when services run and how they run and whose user account they run as. You know, do they run as an administrator? Do they run as a standard user? And just controls for things are easier to hand. We've got the indexing service, which will index your hard drive, make files easier to find. Even device managers here is a snap-in. And shared folders. Event viewer. So we can have a look at different logs. So if there was any issues, like, look, we've got a warning, event system, ComPlus event system failed to create an instance of the subscriber, blah, 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 blah. Don't know really what that means. But the VM seems to be working. That's just a warning. That's not a critical error, so to speak. So we've got all this, and then we've got this local security policy. Can change things in terms of security. Server extensions administrator. Now I have shown you one way to make a user account, but Windows 2000 did feature a new wizard to make user accounts, which if I just step out of the VM for a moment and go to my local machine, it's still here. See? Now, from here, again, I could make the ball bag account. Boris Johnson. Oh, no, I don't want to make him a power user. I want to make him a restricted user. But then I could go back to the management console and tweak the account even further. so I could get access to things like change password at next login, or user or password expiry, or anything like that. There we go. Got the Windows 2000 startup sound. So there you go. And we also have access to certain games, including... Oh. Can it move pinball? I didn't want to move it. I just wanted to run it. You already see the software restrictions at work. Okay, so... So we've got pinball, which I guess is part of the no internet in the 2000s starter pack. Now this originally obviously came with Microsoft Plus for Windows 95 and is based on, I think, full tilt pinball from Access. But yeah, that's pinball. It was in Windows 2000 as well as NT4 actually. Forgot to show you that in NT4 because it was there. Got Solitaire, Free Cell, Minesweeper. And we have a command prompt, obviously. So yeah, that is Microsoft Windows 2000. Now, I would like to show you something before I go and shut it down. I will just reboot it. And there we go. We've got access to all kinds of boot options. So safe mode with networking, safe mode with command prompt, enable boot logging, VGA mode, last known good configuration if there's a hardware fault, directory services restore mode, Windows 2000 domain controllers only, debugging mode, boot normally, return to OS choices menu. So I could go to safe mode and it will show all the things that it is going to load. So it's a very verbose loading mode. There you go. Windows 2000 is starting up. It's starting up in safe mode. Obviously, it's not going to take up the full screen because it's VGA. It's 640 by 480 pixels. And obviously, there's going to be no drivers. But unlike Windows 95, 98 and ME safe mode, as you will see, if it eventually starts up, because Windows 2000 takes ages to start up in save mode. As you will see, you do get CD-ROM drive access. And VMware's mouse pointer integration still seems to work in safe mode, which is quite impressive. And we are started. Now Windows is running in safe mode. And the desktop background has been replaced with this black desktop background that says Windows 2000 build 2195 Service Pack 4 free. But as you can see, we're in safe mode, so we could make changes that we needed to make. But something that I think I've just noticed. Right. Okay, bear with me here. Nope, that does still work. There's some programs nowadays that will refuse to install or uninstall in safe mode because the Windows installer service does not want to work. So it's yeah, that's a bit off. Yep. Oh no, this is the same. So if you needed to, so if it was a program that was encapsulated by a Windows installer installation routine, like let's say for some reason Office 2000 had made the system break, then I couldn't actually do anything with this because I can't use the Windows installer service to try and remove anything. So, yeah, I don't think that was very well thought out. Whoops-a-daisy. Oh well. But there you go. That is Windows 2000 Professional. Very good operating system. Did feature DirectX 9.0C, so you could do more gaming on Windows 2000 than you could on Windows NT4. Well, it didn't include it, but it supported installing it. Only issue is there's some games, even on Windows 2000, would not run. Things like Roll Cage runs fine on 98, even runs fine on XP, but on 2000 can't get it to go. Same with a couple of other games. So it is a bit hit and miss, really, is Windows 2000. But a lot of people used it even after XP became popular. So it wasn't exactly unpopular. And a lot like NT, even though it had more bells and whistles, for the most part, it would just work. And work very well. So, that is a look at Windows 2000. Microsoft released various editions of Windows 2000 for different markets and business needs. Professional, Server, Advanced Server, and Data Center Server. Each was packaged separately. Windows 2000 was designed as a desktop operating system for businesses and power users. It is a client version of Windows 2000. It offers greater security and stability than many of the previous Windows desktop operating systems. It supports up to 2 processors, can address up to 4 GB of RAM. The system requirements are a Pentium processor or equivalent of 133 MHz or greater, at least 32 MB of RAM, 650 MB of hard disk drive space, and a CD-ROM drive. And the recommended specs are a Pentium 2, 128 MB of RAM, 2 GB of hard drive space, and a CD-ROM drive. Windows 2000 Server shares the same user interface with Windows 2000 Professional, but contains additional components for the computer to perform server roles and run the infrastructure and application software. A significant new component introduced to the server versions is Active Directory, which is an enterprise-wide directory service based on Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, or LDAP. Additionally, Microsoft integrated Kerberos network authentication, replacing the often criticised NT LAN Manager authentication system used in previous versions. This also provided a purely transitive trust relationship between Windows 2000 domains in a forest, a collection of one or more Windows 2000 domains that shared a common scheme, configuration, and global catalogue being linked by two-way transitive trusts. Furthermore, Windows 2000 introduced a domain name server, which allows dynamic registration of IP addresses. Windows 2000 Server supports up to 4 processors and 4 gigs of RAM, with a minimum requirement of 128 megabytes of RAM and 1 gig of hard disk space. However, requirements may be higher depending on the installed component. Windows 2000 Advanced Server is a variant of Windows 2000 Server operating system designed for medium to large businesses. It offers clustering infrastructure for high availability and scalability of services and applications, including support for up to 8 CPUs, a main memory amount of up to 8 GB on physical address extension (PAE) systems, and the ability to do 8-way SMP. It supports TCP over IP load balancing and enhanced 2-node server clusters based on the Microsoft Cluster Server in Windows NT Server 4 Enterprise Edition. System requirements are similar to those of Windows 2000 Server, however, they may need to be higher to scale to larger infrastructure. Windows 2000 Data Center Server is a variant of the Windows 2000 Server designed for large businesses that move large quantities of confidential or sensitive data frequently via a central server. Like Advanced Server, it supports clustering, failover, and load balancing. Its minimum system requirements are normal, but it was designed to be capable of handling advanced, fault-tolerant and scalable hardware. For instance, computers with up to 32 CPUs and 32 gigabytes of RAM. With rigorous system testing and qualification, hardware partitioning, coordinated maintenance and change control, system requirements are similar to those of Windows 2000 Advanced Server. However, they may need to be higher to scale to larger infrastructure. Windows 2000 Data Center Server was released to manufacturing on August the 11th, 2000 and launched on September the 26th, 2000. This edition was based on Windows 2000 with Service Pack 1 and was not available at retail. And speaking of service packs, Windows 2000 has received 4 full service packs and 1 roll-up update package following Service Pack 4, which is the last service pack. Well, officially. You'll have probably seen Windows 2000 Service Pack 5, but it, like Windows XP Service Pack 4, is unofficial and is usually just an amalgamation of all the last Service Pack updates, and maybe a couple of other toys to make the operating system more usable for modern applications. Microsoft phased out all development of its Java Virtual Machine from Windows 2000 and Service Pack 3. Internet Explorer 5.01 has also been upgraded to the corresponding Service Pack level. Microsoft had originally intended to release a 5th Service Pack for Windows 2000, officially that is, but Microsoft cancelled this project early in its development and instead released Update Rollup 1 for Service Pack 4, a collection of all the security-related hotfixes and some other significant issues. The Update Rollup does not include all non-security related hotfixes and is not subjected to the same extensive regression testing as a full Service Pack. Microsoft states this update will meet customers' needs better than a whole new Service Pack and will still help Windows 2000 customers secure their PCs, reduce support costs and support existing computer hardware. Several of Windows 2000's components are upgradable to newer versions, as well as components introduced in later versions of Windows. These include DirectX 9.0C, which was the latest supported build, Windows Media Player 9 series, Windows Media Encoder 7.1, and the Windows Media 8 encoding utility command line. Internet Explorer 6 or Outlook Express 6 with Service Pack 1. Office 2003 is the last version of Microsoft Office to be compatible with Windows 2000. .NET Framework 2.0 with Service Pack 2. Visual C++ 2008 runtime. MSN Messenger 7.0, Windows Messenger is also available for Windows 2000. NetMeeting 3.01. Microsoft Agent 2.0. ActiveSync 4.5, Microsoft XML 6.0 Service Pack 2, Microsoft Data Access Components 2.81, Windows Script Host 5.7, Windows Installer 3.1, and Visual Studio 2005 is the last version of Visual Studio to be compatible with Windows 2000. During the Windows 2000 period, the nature of attacks on Windows servers changed. More attacks came from remote sources via the internet. This has led to an overwhelming number of malicious programs exploiting the Internet Information Services, specifically a notorious buffer overflow tendency. This tendency is not operating system version specific, but rather configuration specific. It depends on the services that are enabled. Following this, a common complaint is that by default, Windows 2000 installations contain numerous potential security problems. Many unneeded services are installed and enabled, and there is no active local security policy. In addition to insecure defaults, according to the SANS Institute, the most common flaws discovered are remotely exploitable buffer overflow vulnerabilities. Other criticized flaws include the use of vulnerable encryption technologies. Code Red and Code Red 2 were famous and much discussed worms that exploited vulnerabilities of the Windows indexing service of Windows 2000's Internet Information Service. In August 2003, security researchers estimated that two major worms called So Big and Blaster infected more than 500,000 Microsoft Windows computers. The 2005 Zotob worm was blamed for security compromises on Windows 2000 machines at ABC, CNN, the New York Times Company, and the United States Department of Homeland Security. Yee! On September the 8th, 2009, Microsoft skipped patching 2 of the 5 security flaws that were addressed in the monthly security update, saying that patching 1 of the critical security flaws was infeasible. According to Microsoft Security Bulletin MS09-048, the architecture is to properly support TCP/IP protection does not exist on Microsoft Windows 2000 systems, making it infeasible to build the fix for Windows 2000 Service Pack 4 to eliminate the vulnerability. To do so would require re-architecting a very significant part of Windows 2000 Service Pack 4 operating system. There would be no assurance that applications designed to run on Windows 2000 Service Pack 4 would continue to operate on the updated system. No patches for this flaw were released for the newer Windows XP 32-bit and Windows XP Professional 64-bit either. Despite both being affected, Microsoft suggested turning on the Windows firewall in those versions. Windows 2000 was superseded by newer Microsoft operating systems, Windows 2000 Server products by Windows Server 2003, and Windows 2000 Professional by Windows XP Professional. The Windows 2000 family of operating systems moved from mainstream support to the extended support phase on June the 30th, 2005. Microsoft says this marks the progression of Windows 2000 through the Windows Lifecycle policy. Under mainstream support, Microsoft freely provides design changes, if any, service packs, and non-security related updates in addition to security updates, whereas in extended support, service packs are not provided and non-security updates require contacting the support personnel by email or phone. Under the extended support phase, Microsoft continued to provide critical security updates for every month of all components of Windows 2000, including Internet Explorer 5.0 Service Pack 4, and paid per incident support for technical issues. Because of Windows 2000's age, updated versions of components such as Media Player 11 and Internet Explorer 7 have not been released for it. In the case of Microsoft Internet Explorer, Microsoft said in 2005 that some of the security work in IE7 relies on operating system functionality in XP Service Pack 2 that is non-trivial to port back to Windows 2000. While users of Windows 2000 Professional and Server were eligible to purchase the upgrade license for Windows Vista Business or Windows Server 2008, neither of these operating systems can directly perform an upgrade installation from Windows 2000. A clean installation must be performed instead or a two-step upgrade through XP or 2003. Microsoft has dropped the upgrade path from Windows 2000 and earlier to Windows 7. Users of Windows 2000 must buy a full Windows 7 license. Although Windows 2000 is the last NT-based version of Microsoft Windows which does not include product activation, Microsoft has introduced Windows Genuine Advantage for certain downloads and non-critical updates from the Download Center for Windows 2000. Windows 2000 reached the end of life on July the 13th, 2010. It will not receive any new security updates and new security related hotfixes after this date. In Japan, over 130,000 servers and 500,000 PCs in local governments were affected. Many local governments said they will not upgrade as they do not have the funds to cover a replacement. As of 2011, Windows Update still supports the Windows 2000 updates available on Patch Tuesday in July 2010. For example, if older optional Windows 2000 features are enabled later, Microsoft Office products under Windows 2000 have their own product life cycles, while Internet Explorer 6 for Windows XP did receive security patches up until it lost support. This is not the case for IE6 under Windows 2000. The Windows Malicious Software Removal tool installed monthly by Windows Update for XP and later versions can still be downloaded manually for Windows 2000. So, that, I guess, is the story of Windows 2000. I'm sorry, I know it's been a long one, but I hope you did enjoy it. I would like to thank Wikipedia, and I would like to thank you all for watching this video. And please join me for my next video if you like this one. And hopefully we'll be doing some more playing about with Windows 2000 to commemorate the anniversary. Cheery bye.